Well, here we are again today, folks. A new day. We had been in the book of Acts 16 talking about Paul for the last 4 or 5 excerpts. But this morning we're going to start in a brand new one. We're going to start in, this would be 48. This would be number 48 this morning if you were to want to review something. And we're going to talk about the lost sheep this morning, or the lost coin, or some of the things in the book of Luke, chapter 15, where Jesus talks himself about people who are in, sheep who are in. The lost sheep was a sheep that was in the fold already. There were 99, and the man lost one sheep. One sheep had gone astray. That sheep had not been permanently lost. Had that sheep died, it would have still been that man's sheep. It would have been a dead sheep, but it still would have been that man's sheep. And this is the way it is once we become a child of God. We're a child of God once we become a child of God, and we're one of his sheep. Now, if we get outside of the fold, which sometimes we do, and if we do, usually it's our own fault. We get to looking around and we get in the flesh and we get out of the word, we get out of praying. Last night as we had a prayer meeting, the preacher talked about the failure of a man spiritually usually starts with himself. He usually stops reading the Bible, or he stops praying, or he may have some ought against somebody in the church, or maybe they bought something for the parking lot, or something. You say, well, man, if they're going to throw money away like that, I'm not going to give any more of mine, so you stop tithing. Well, whenever you stop doing anything that God had showed you that you need to do, and you had already started doing it, and you were doing it in the Lord, and then you stop doing it, then you become one of those sheep. One of those sheep that get outside of the fold, and then you stray away, and after a while, you're gone. You're away from the group that you were with, and you can't even find your own group anymore. And then somebody has to come after you. Well, let me ask you the question. Are you the one leaving, or are you the one that's out, or are you the one today that's going after the lost sheep? Now, we've had brothers and sisters sit beside us in church, in the Lord, and all of a sudden we notice, well, we say to somebody, have you seen Joe lately? And they say, no, I hadn't seen him. And well, I hadn't seen him in 2 Sundays. Well, I wonder what the deal is. Well, instead of talking about it with each other, how about one of y'all getting on the ball and go see if you can find Joe and see what the problem is? So, hey, you do. You get out there and you go find Joe. Now, you're going to find yourself in one of these conditions. If you're outside of the church this morning and you've left, you're going to find yourself perhaps in a place of pride. Do you know what pride's made out of stone? Do you know yeah, pride is so wicked and hard and strong that you can't even x-ray it. If you x-ray it, you'll say, I can't see through it. It's like looking through a lead shield. Pride is one of the wickedest things that ever came to a man. And that's to say, well, I got out and I think I was right, and I ain't going to back up for nobody, and I ain't getting back in. I don't care what so-and-so says or so-and-so. And by the way, they are a so-and-so, and that's how you get when you get pride in your life and you get outside of where you belong. Are you where you belong this morning? Are you in where you belong this morning? Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you in the Word? My question to you today is, are you doing what God would have you do? Why is it hard for the proud to accept the gospel? That's a good question. I ask myself that when I get in the prideful place myself. Why is it so hard for me to get up this morning, open the Bible, and read what God has to say to me? You know why? Because I've got in my own way, and I'm beginning to think that I'm more important than God in my life is. When you find yourself there, you need to get yourself out of there. And, need to figure out how to do that. The first few days of being left, when you leave the church, I did this. I did it. I actually have done this before. The first couple days you leave the sanctuary, you say, well, if old Joe hadn't done, and if old Sue hadn't done, and if old so-and-so hadn't done, and old so-and-so hadn't done, I'd still be there. Well, let me tell you what happened to you. You got your eyes off from the book. You got your eyes off from the Lord. You got your eyes on the people. And we have to suffer some things. If you're going to sit in church, you're going to have to suffer some things. You're going to have to learn how to see through or by some things. The devil is going to put things in your way. If you're in the church house and you're trying to follow God, you're sitting, we'll say, 2/3 of the way back in a pew. The man and woman behind you are carrying on a conversation, and you're upset about it. The person in front of you, 3 pews down, has a child, and he's going goo, 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 and the preacher's up there preaching. Well, all of a sudden, the guy beside you gets up and goes to the bathroom. Another guy over here, he gets up and goes have a cigarette. And when he comes back in, you can smell the cigarette more than you can hear the preaching. Now, what has happened to you is your mind has got off from what it was supposed to be on. You came there to get a message. You came there to hear the preacher. You came there to hear what you need to hear. And you let everything distract you. You're fixing to become a lost sheep. You're fixing to become a lost coin. You're fixing to become a misplaced person in the church. Because what's happened to you is you're on your first step out the door. And you'll go home and you'll complain during the week and you'll say, I don't see any point going down there. There's too much distraction. What the distraction is that you're not close enough to the Lord to not let other things distract you. No matter if something behind you is going on, you listen, you look at the preacher. Let's just say, for instance, you're sitting in a church building today, and there's 300 people in there. A relatively small group, and 300 people, and those 300 people, the preacher's got to preach 300 messages. Do you know that? Because more than likely, you're sitting there is one thing God's going to have him say for you. And that one thing he's going to say for you, if you're listening to the guy behind you and complaining and griping in your mind, you're not going to hear what he's got to say for you. If what he's saying for you happened to be at the exact time the guy over next to you got up and went out and had a cigarette, and you're thinking about him rather than what the preacher's saying, you missed what the preacher said. You wonder why sometimes. Why does that preacher say the same thing 4 times? Well, he's saying it 4 times because he knows that you were distracted 3 of those 4 times, and what he's saying was for you. And because you were distracted, he has to say it 4 times in order for you to get it. But you may not listen any one of the 4 times. You may be distracted every time of the 4 times what he's saying is for you. And when you go out the door, you get in the car and you head home, and you say to the wife and kids, I didn't get a thing out of that this morning. The reason why is you're a sheep that's out of place this morning. You're a sheep today that's out of the place. Now what you need to do is somebody doesn't come get you and size you up and bring you in. You need to bring yourself back. You need to find out where you left and get back in. Come next Sunday, come Wednesday, come sometime, get back in, put the blinders on, don't look around you, don't watch what's happening around you. You just come to get what that preacher's got for you. By the way, that preacher worked hard, studied hard, and learned, prayed hard, asked God to have a message to deliver to you. If you haven't got it, you need to get it. Now, if you haven't got salvation, you need to get that. And you get that by